2 minutes late. With my apologies, we had some technical difficulties with our streaming software, but I wanted to make sure that we hopped in as quickly as we can, and Ralph is joining me in just a minute. So, begging everyone's forgiveness for our tardiness, but hopefully we're going to make it up to you with awesome content and amazing information. And yeah, appreciate everybody being here. So just a little bit of housekeeping while we're waiting on Ralph. If you're watching on your desktop computer, on the right-hand side is a chat pane. I'd love for you to use it. And if you're watching on your phone, then you're going to see a chat icon underneath the screen, and you can chat in there. And I'm joined by the host of Perpetual Traffic, Ralph Burns. Ralph.
Hello.
Sorry for the tech kerfuffle this morning. My fault.
No, that's quite all right. We're this is live radio, as we used to say, but it's actually live YouTube. So things like that happen.
Yeah, we switched streaming software, y'all, and apparently I shouldn't be running a digital agency because I don't know how to use technology. So I went back to what I know.
This in no way reflects the competency of the hosts.
That's right.
Are on Perpetual Fridays.
I have a person that handles this. They're going to be dealt with.
Yeah, right. I have people.
Yeah. Ralph, you've got a topic teed up for us today that I'm actually really excited about because I think it's a cool sort of pivot to the way people normally think. Is this preemptive? Is there other stuff we should get to?
No, I mean, it's just something that's been on my mind quite a bit in the last, well, a couple of years, but especially I think it's sort of sped up and it's accelerated a bit in the last 3 to 6 months, especially with everything that's going on Facebook today. It just sort of underscores the importance of looking at your overall marketing mix as opposed to just a singular channel. And there's a fair amount of debate as to actually what the right number is and how to calculate it and what's included in it. But I think it's an important topic for us to discuss here because we are obviously talking about traffic and conversion and how we can use paid traffic in many cases. But overall, marketing is really what, at the end of the day, is the thing that drives the growth of your business, right? I mean, it's like we're marketing right now. We're spending time, maybe not money. Somebody probably paid for the Restream studio, membership, or the other one that we were on before. But the point is like marketing is a cost that you have to invest in your business. Paid media spend is part of that cost, right? What we refer to, going back to, there was a couple episodes ago, we went into customer acquisition cost and how much can you afford to pay for a customer. So when I sort of look at marketing in general, advertising spend is just one component of that. So you run a Google Ads agency, we run a social media marketing or customer acquisition amplification agency is what we're really sort of talking about these days, and especially inside Tier 11. And the advertising spend is just one part of that. So there's this ratio that's out there that a lot of people talk about now because it's maybe more relevant because the visibility and the transparency of exactly what's happening inside Facebook Ads Manager has changed significantly. Obviously, it's going to be changing on the Google side of the equation as well. We're covering pretty much 90% of the internet right there, as at least, from an advertising perspective. And YouTube, obviously, being included in on that. And this new number that people are talking about, which I don't necessarily agree with it 100%. That's the reason why I think there is some debate. It's referred to as MER, M-E-R. And it's yet another acronym that marketers and digital marketers especially should get familiar with. It's, from my account, I don't know who invented it or who came up with it, but it's marketing efficiency ratio. There's that M, E, and the R varies depending on like which Google search you do and how you actually come up with the end. Some say it's, it's this number and then you divide it by 100. Some say it's another number. The point is that it's really important. I think the Vander Group did a pretty good job with the blog post that we put into the chat here, but it's not a definitive number. What it really is what is your overall cost of your marketing, right? Or, but then how does that relate to your overall revenue? So your revenue, and MER, I guess in the definition of the Vander Group, we'll just use that as an example, maybe our benchmark. It's revenue, total revenue in the month, day, week, probably in a month, I think is a more logical way of looking at it, divided by your marketing costs. So that could be your ad spend. In some circles, people are saying that. It's like, but I really look at it as your overall marketing cost. And I think that's a good way of looking at it, because when I look at our profit and loss statement at tier 11, I have a budget for marketing, right? It's a chunk of change. And then I'm looking at, okay, how many new customers did we get from that chunk of change that I spend every single month? And marketing costs for us, yes, it's Facebook advertising costs. Yes, it's Google costs. Yes, it's other channels. Yes, it's YouTube. Yes, it's all these things. But it's also, from a profit and loss perspective, I throw in my marketing people's salaries. I throw in our softwares that we use, like everything that's related to like our web hosting. Like our website is not there just because it looks pretty. It's there to bring in business. It's part of our marketing. We're updating that right now. Like content writers that we use, softwares that we use, our email sequence stuff that we use, like everything together, that's a line item called marketing, with ad spend being a breakdown within that cost. And I look at that and I say, all right, if we spent X amount this month, how much do we get back in return for that? And how much can I pay to acquire a new customer at tier 11? So am I looking at it in the right way necessarily in the digital marketing community? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of digital marketers and smart people that are out there that have written posts about this and have talked about MER say it's more like a blended ROAS. That's really what it is. It's what your revenue is per month over what your total advertising spend is. You could look at it that way too, I suppose. But is that really the most accurate way of looking at it? So if you have an agency, for example, maybe you're running ads through an agency right now, your agency cost, I would submit, should go into that number. Your overall, like your staffing that you have, maybe you have a CMO on staff and maybe you outsource to a number of different agencies. Like all those costs are your total marketing spend, because the goal of marketing is not necessarily to retain customers, it's to acquire new customers, really. Argument could be made, yes, it is to retain them, obviously, email sequences and everything else that go along with it. But like, just set that aside. The goal of business is to acquire customers, right? To acquire new customers, to grow current customers and selling more stuff to them, but also making sure that you don't lose those customers. So that's all part of your marketing, right? So MER, or marketing efficiency ratio, I think is a better way of looking at like where you're spending your money, where you're spending your time, and what return are you getting for that in a ratio. So let's say your revenue for the month is $100,000 and your total marketing spend or your total marketing cost is $50,000. Well, you divide, the denominator into the numerator. Is that what it is in math? And
I never went to college, Ralph. I can't help you.
And you get a MER of 2 in that case, I believe. So 50,000 into 100,000 goes twice, I believe. Some people say, well, then divide that by 100, and so you get a ratio. Well, I mean, I suppose you could, but the point is like you're looking at things in a different way. However you actually calculate it, whether it's a decimal, whether it's a whole number, doesn't really matter. For us at tier 11, we do it as a whole number because nobody's really defined it. But as long as you're speaking in the same language, I think that's the most important thing. So MER is a different way of looking at holistically how you're growing your business. So in this day and age of reduced attribution and lessened signals coming from all individual platforms, if you're looking at ROAS by channel, return on ad spend, which is, I'm looking at my Facebook ad spend. I spent $50,000 this month and I made $75,000 this month. Well, if you're looking at from a ROAS perspective, you're looking at just one single channel, and you might be shortchanging yourself because you're just seeing one part of the entire marketing mix. My point is that, like, when we look at what we're spending for our advertising, we don't break it down. I mean, for our own internal marketing, I know some of our customers do break it down by channel. We're trying to get away from that. And this idea of marketing efficiency ratio, I think is where the puck is going right now, and that's, that is a big, I think it's a big shift for a lot of, one day attribution, return on ad spend by channel people that are out there that are looking for that sort of thing. Like, this is a shift, and it's a painful shift, I think, for some folks, but I think it's the right shift. And if you go back to marketing pre-digital advertising, pre-Facebook, pre-YouTube, all these other sorts of things where you have all this granularity, this is actually how businesses used to run, and being a guy that actually sold TV ads. Can you believe that? Kasim, like, my second job out of college was selling cable advertising to, Oriental rug shops and used car lots and everything else. And I'm like, I don't know, where's your demographic? Oh, I don't know. They're on Lifetime Channel, CNN, and maybe ESPN. They're like, all right, sounds good. We'll put your ads there. And we didn't really know if it worked, but I have more customers this month than I had last month. And all I really did is bought ads from this guy named Burns. So there was my ROAS. And that's sort of how it used to operate. So I'm not saying we're going back to the Stone Age here with regard to how we used to sell cable advertising back in the early 90s. The point is that is a much more holistic way of looking at your overall business. And I would highly encourage you all to sort of take a step back and look at it in a different way here. And it's certainly MER, or marketing efficiency ratio, I believe is a much simpler way of looking at things, and it's also a more mature business way of looking at things. But it's going to be tougher for maybe some smaller businesses. And I think when this whole iOS thing came out and Facebook railed against it, they were really talking about the small business owner being the one that's really impacted here, because those are the folks, I believe, that are seeing the biggest impact from this lack of attribution, this lack of signal. And because they can't singularly go back to individual channels and say, yeah, I need to put more marketing spend here and not there, as opposed to looking at it as an overall mix. So does that make sense, or is that just me railing on for 15 or so minutes on MER?
No, it makes sense. I've got a beef with it, and it's not insurmountable, but maybe it'll make for interesting listening. I used to have a real estate investment agency with two partners. We were super successful. We had the highest performing real estate investment campaign on the planet. And we were in every single major MSA, every, basically major metro. And my partner at the time, who actually ended up buying us out, he was an absolute total data nerd. And he used he called it the golden ratio, which is, for every dollar I put in, how many dollars do I get out? It was MER. It was exactly what you've described. He named it something different. MER is probably better. My challenge to him, though, is the same challenge that I have with MER, and it's the life cycle of the lead isn't properly reflected. My soft opinion, because if and it doesn't matter how it is that you're calculating MER, or what time period you're using. Let's say you're using month over month. If you put in $10,000 in advertising in January, and then you look at how much money you made in January, my issue with that as a marketer is the money you made in January was from the advertising spend from November. And so MER ends up being disassociated, and you start looking at the wrong trend lines, and then you start making decisions based off of trends that aren't actually correlated. So where I would say, and this doesn't kill MER, I think it changes the way that we calculate it, because I do think, grand scheme, you have to go this direction. There's no choice. By Google's own admission, 30% of all conversions are assisted conversions, meaning we can't track their final makeup. So I think that this is the only way that a business is going to be able to prove efficiency. But I don't think it's as simple as, I'm going to take what I spent and what I made. I think we need to know, in the real estate investment game, depending on the geography you were in, it was 3 to 18 months on average between the time a lead came in and the time that we actually monetized that house. because you have to do the lead intake, you have to negotiate the deal, you have to put the house under contract, and then either you buy the house, in which case you're rehabbing it and selling it, which is that could be a year, depending on the size of the house, or you paper the house up and then you wholesale the paper, which that's probably another month. But it no matter what, when I paid for that lead, I don't know how much, dude, we could make 150 grand on one property, but it would be a year and a half later. And so what we would need to do, and this was always my argument to my partner, and he never wanted to do it because it screwed up all the rest of his books. We needed to take that 150 grand and put it back 18 months earlier to when the spend happened. And that's really where marketing efficiency, I think, can be found. So I'm going to pause there, Ralph, and see if am I splitting hairs, or is this worthy discussion?
No, I think it's absolutely worthy discussion, because it's every system of attribution or marketing measurement is flawed.
Right. It's all, and I'm not pick your poison.
Absolutely. Like we're just like Google attribution is flawed. Facebook attribution is flawed. MER is flawed.
Right.
Because of the very things that you're talking about here. The interesting part of like what you're talking about is, in a lot of ways, it's almost like if you make $150,000 in profit 18 months after you acquired that initial investment from that marketing from that month, how should you spread out that revenue for the company?
Right.
Should you spread it out? Like, this is more of like a gap, like generally accepted accounting principles question. Should that be spread out from the entire 18-month span, or should it be from the time it was sold right at the moment the cash was actually accrued? Because it's like that technically, like from accounting terms, like if you say, all right, well, Kasim, I'm going to hire you guys for the next year. I'm going to pay you up front right now. And you're gonna want to, on your books, put that in the month of July, but technically you're gonna have to spread that out from July to June of next year.
Right.
Same sort of thing. It's like, well, maybe I come on as a customer of yours. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna stay on with you guys, but then you bill me at the end of 12 months. Like, how do you bill that? Well, technically, through generally accepted accounting principles, I don't really know all of them. I'm not a CFO by any stretch. That's why I have one. But should it be stretched out from the year previous, because it's revenue that you earned in the previous year, as opposed to the month in which it actually comes into your books? So, like, I don't know if I'm losing you on this, but the point is like the attribution is almost like, where are you going to put it? Like, you can put it that 12 months later as a lump sum, but technically through GAAP, you should spread it out through the entire 12 months. So it's kind of the same thing with what you're talking about. It's like there's no perfect way in which to do it. I do think that the longer your time span, the more accurate I think this measure becomes and this ratio becomes.
If you're buying a business, you should be looking at MER. If you're buying a business, you should be, how much have they spent in total? How much have they made in total? And that, I think you're absolutely right. The more you zoom out, the more accurate it gets. And I also think the way you calculate it is heavily dependent on the decision you're trying to make. If we're trying to figure out how much do I spend on paid traffic, that's calculated differently than how much should I, allocate towards hiring, this particular role or this particular specialist or whatever. So I think that, just like when you're slicing and dicing data, when you're looking at Facebook ads or Google ads, what you look at and how you calculate it is dependent upon what it is that you're trying to figure out. So that's why, you mentioned a CFO earlier. We just hired a CFO, and I always kind of thought it was like a superfluous role, like something that big companies needed and smaller businesses didn't need to waste money on. And was I wrong?
Yeah,
it's so helpful.
God, it's so helpful. Yeah. I'll tell you what, we survived without one for 6 years, probably 5-6 years. And, then hired a bookkeeper probably about 5 years ago. I was doing it all myself, if you can believe that. Do not do that, by the way. Hire out as soon as you can afford it. But then, the level of financial analysis that goes into understanding exactly what's going on in the business is like just magnified as soon as you get somebody who really does understand like budgets, cash flow, all this generally accepted accounting principle stuff that we just mentioned, which I probably lost like nearly the entire audience on, which is a horrible thing to say on YouTube Live. But anyway, the point is like you have to understand all these things. And as soon as you get like that deeper dive analysis on your business, it's amazing what could all of a sudden reveal itself. And you're like, holy crap, look at all these inefficiencies,
Right.
So, but yeah, I think, Murr, like this is an what we're talking about here. I'm not saying like everyone on today's live should necessarily do it the way that we do it. I'm saying that's how we look at it, and we look at it as a month. So I know my budget for marketing is X amount per month, and whenever that comes in, it might be the customer might come in within a week. It might take 60 to 90 days. In our case, it's typically under 30 days, so it's ideal to look at it monthly. I think you do have to, if you have a longer buy cycle like you're talking about in the real estate investing niche, which, totally get that. Like it's an 18-month process. Like I have a guy that I lend money to that does flipping houses. It might be 6 months, it might be 18 months.
Right.
So I mean, like it depends on what your business is. For us, 30 days really works well. Having a CFO do like a quick analysis on stuff like on the spot is super helpful too. So right, should I hire a new content guy? Should I, add this software? What's the return on if I add another, a videographer on staff? Like, how does that affect things? But having budgets, sticking to it, and then understanding what your cost per acquisition is, I think is like your main business metric that you as a business owner should really have a very good understanding of.
Yeah, you got to know your numbers. We've got a couple of folks chiming in. Marcos, thanks for being here. Basel, thanks for being here. Second time we've seen you. Appreciate you. Basel says, what is Kasim going to be talking about at Traffic and Conversion? It's a good question that I don't know the answer to yet. I haven't created my deck, so stay tuned. And yeah, sorry I don't have a better answer for you. It'll be something Google Ads related. You can bet on that.
There's a fair shot. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're watching live and you have questions for us, it doesn't need to be thematically aligned with what it is we're talking about. So if y'all have, you want some input on something, Ralph is one of the most polished agency owners I know, so there's a lot that I think he can offer. But feel free, drop it in the chat. We'd love to let you direct the discussion. That's why we're here. So if we're talking about what we're talking about, it's because that's what we're interested in. But you can feel free to derail us a little bit. I think we'd count it as a gift. Yeah.
I got a question for you. In your agency, is it all conversion based, or do you do any kind of brand building, like purposeful brand building campaigns that have really nothing to do with conversion? They're just really for brand awareness or just for like retargeting audiences after the fact. Like what's your sense there? Because that's always something for our customers that they rail against. It's like, no, I want $1 to get like $1 back plus. Well, in the age of Murr, whether or not you agree with it or not, we happen to agree with it. Brand building actually is important, but I'm curious as to what your take is on that.
It happens secondarily. I don't know how that word works. We sell conversions. Like that's the upfront narrative. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that most of the customers that come in are asking for conversions. But what ends up happening is they start to see the brand lift. And to give you some specific examples, Smart Shopping, which is the e-commerce mechanism that we use most often for our e-commerce stores, because it's an outbound display network, you'll see hundreds of thousands of impressions in the first month. You'll see millions, tens of millions of impressions on a large enough campaign. And they start to see the impact of that pretty quickly. First, your branded searches start to go up. So when you're running Smart Shopping, people start searching for your brand. And it makes sense because they've seen your logo. They've seen your URL. They've seen your product name. And so they start like, oh, well, I remember those folks. Who were they exactly? And then they go and they search for you. So brand searches start going up. Social engagement and interaction starts going up. If you have a YouTube channel or whatever, they start engaging more. And when clients see that, they're like, oh, this is cool. I want more of that. And then that gives us kind of the secondary pivot to where we can add a brand campaign overlaid on top of the ROAS campaign. And I do have, not a bunch of them, but I do have clients who have given us an amount of money that doesn't require an instant ROI. They're like, hey, this is experimentation, brand building, awareness building, whatever. This is your sandbox. Go ahead and play with it. And they tend to be my more forward-thinking clients. That spend tends to pay off, I think, pretty significantly, because we're always figuring stuff out too, is the other thing. But we don't do as much of it as we should, to be honest with you. And I think it's because the whole world has been spoiled the last couple of years, just instant gratification. It was so easy to prove ROI. And as that's changing, I think what I need to do is maybe change my tune a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think the answer to your question from my perspective is always like, yeah, it's a secondary thing, and we're a performance marketing company, and that's the end of that. But
you said that a lot better than I did, Ralph. I'm gonna.
Well, no, it's because I don't know if it's better or it's just different. But like from my perspective, like you're paying for that impression no matter what. Like for those millions of impressions, there's millions of people who took no action whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, what's cool about this particular mechanism is you're not paying unless they click. So it's not a CPM model; it's a CPC model, which means
Good point.
You kind of you end up, and YouTube's the same way. YouTube, you don't pay depending on the type of video you're using, but like YouTube in-stream advertisements, for instance. And you taught me this, Ralph. They moved the line of demarcation. It used to be earlier, but now you don't pay unless they watch 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's huge. If you're running video ads, like you can do a lot, say a lot, brand a lot in less than 30 seconds. And, if they skip or bounce, it doesn't mean that they're not interested. It just means they're not interested now. And so your ability to get in front of people and capture some of those free views, I think that's a significant advantage to advertisers willing to invest in branding.
Geez, it makes the case for branding even more powerful on that platform.
Yep.
That's actually a really good point I hadn't thought of, because I'm looking at like the tier 11 ads from the last week, and we reached over 100,000 people on a very, very small spend, but we paid for each one of those, whereas on YouTube, if we had done the same thing, maybe the targeting wouldn't have been maybe quite as laser focused. I don't know. We do sort of limited YouTube.
Yeah. YouTube's not as good at Facebook at like interest-based segmentation, those things.
Right. But the point is like, I would have gotten lots of impressions. I always sort of think back to like, how did Ty Lopez become Ty Lopez?
Books.
Your books. I believe, just pure skill.
Yeah.
That's why he became who he
Lamborghinis.
is. Anyway, I've never met him.
I've met him. He's not a bad dude. I'm in a mastermind with him and one of his partners. But
really?
Everybody ribs on him. He's a good guy. He's a good guy when he's not on YouTube. But his YouTube videos, man, God, is he a douchebag? But he's a good dude. He's a real good dude. And he knows exactly what he's doing. I feel that way about Grant Cardone. I don't think Grant Cardone's a bad guy. But when you watch his videos, when you watch his ads, like I'm convinced he's in a basement somewhere biting the heads off of baby rabbits. Like he just comes off as like a supervillain. And I think that's how they get their visibility, I like, and what's funny about Ty, man, is his education, like the stuff he sells, is quality. It's not, MLM dumpy junk. Like if you actually pay for what it is that he's schlepping, you end up with pretty good content. But he just sort of went a direction that, and look at him, man, he won. We're talking about him. You know what I mean? We're talking about him, and whoever watches this video is going to hear his name, and a couple people won't know who he is, and they'll go Google him. And anyway, Basil's got a question for you, by the way.
But anyway, to finish that point, how did he become that? He basically bought $1 million worth of YouTube advertising.
Was that really the start of it? I thought it was that TEDx talk. I guess that's what it was. He got the TEDx talk and then sent $1 million of YouTube to it.
Yeah. And it was here I am in my garage, in a rented mansion. Like just Google it. But Like, my point is not to like rip on Ty Lopez, because I mean, you got to like, I respect him to a certain degree. I don't necessarily, agree with the message per se, but the point is like he did it like what we're talking about. He actually went out there and branded himself with $1 million. I forget exactly how much it was. I once saw the ad account and understood like, oh, that's how it happened. And it was all like just these quick videos, and he just went everywhere. And all of a sudden he was a thing. And then people were talking about him, and, whether or not he owned the house, or whether he owned the Lamborghinis, or, whether he really did, have, these supermodels hanging around at his pool, like all these, like he created sort of this divisive thing in our industry. But the point is people were talking about him.
Yep.
And he did it
and
just
now
through
the dude's
impression
doing real
share.
business.
Right.
He's behind. They purchased, I forget what it was. It was Radio Shack, Pier
Yeah.
1 Imports.
Yeah.
I think not Bed Bath & Beyond, but one of those like major brands. I've got a friend right now actually who's investing with Ty and those guys, and they're making 20% year over year. And like, I think they put $30 million into that fund. Like it's a real thing. It's a, and he went from being kind of like the, whatever, sock puppet internet guru to like moving the needle now in a really significant and I think pretty impressive way.
Yeah. Well, my point with all this is that branding did pave the way with $1 million in spend plus
100%.
And, to Basil's comment here, which we will get to your question in just a second. He was absolutely targeting youth. I mean, like my kids were talking about him. They're like, Dad, do you know Ty Lopez? I'm like, no, I don't. It's like, yeah, he makes more money than you. That's what they would always say. I'm like, does he really? Let's look.
Right.
So, but anyway, like he was like Lambos and chicks and everything else, like not my demographics. I'm too old for that shit. But the point is like he created that through branding. And, is brand building, should it be a part of your marketing in 2021 and beyond?
Well, man, I think it's such a phenomenal point. You're right. And they all did that. Billie Jean did that. Billie Jean had the beach house, and I think he did it maybe in a sort of classier way, but that was the same thing. I mean, Grant Cardone, going back to him, same thing. He bought stadiums. I saw somebody recently presented, somebody who would know, who helped him put his events together. They broke down what Grant paid for his events. He paid, it was like $20 million or something to go rent out that big stadium he had in Miami. But it paid off because he packs this house full of all these people, and everybody gets to see his face, hear his voice, get his message, and now he's famous. He just bought himself into nerd fame.
Yeah.
Dude, he used to teach car dealerships how to sell cars. That's where Grant started. Yeah,
for sure. I actually did meet him before he became Grant Cardone way back when he was like a sales, he was a sales kind of guru. Yeah. And he was, trying to put his, his messaging into a sort of a video format. But anyway, the point is, it's like, he became a big thing and did it a lot through branding. Like, so is it, if you're spending money on YouTube, you might be maybe less targeted per se, because you're not necessarily paying by the impression. But over on Facebook, that's what basically most of our advertising for us is actually really brand-based advertising. And then we just use it to retarget and everything else and sort of bring them down that pathway. So certainly something to consider. We can get back to that and even debate it if we need to. So back to Basil's question. He's got, do you have a productized service you offer with Tier 11 or customize it based on each client? And if so, how hard is it to scale? Yeah, good question. I have to assume Basil is an agency owner. But I would always say, like, how we sell stuff is we have a productized service offering. And we call our clients, our agency clients, customers, even though some people inside Tier 11 still call them clients, which pisses me off, by the way. And the reason is that they pay for the service up front, which back 7 or 8 years ago was a real rare thing. We now have an agency owner group that we run, and all of them charge up front now. And they do that just because that's how the industry has shifted. When we started doing it, we would say, all right, what's your ad spend for the previous month? Whatever that is, we'll figure out like the pricing, and then you pay us for the next month's services in advance. So I looked at this and I said, well, that's not necessarily a client model. A client model is when you create a service, you do a service, like how my lawyer charges us. Like he has so many hours and he charges us at the end of the month, like after the fact. Don't have him on retainer necessarily. I mean, obviously that's an hourly kind of thing, but we could have him on retainer if we really wanted to. The point is that it's charging for after the fact. So I always said when I started this agency, I wanted to create a productized service offering, which was rare back then. This is 10 years ago now, where people pay upfront for the service. And we're not going to call them clients because we're not going to individualize it. We're going to have basically a one size fits all for everyone. And it was Facebook, and really at that point, just Facebook ads. And that's it. That's all you got. So Facebook ads, media buying, creative, all that sort of stuff, but only on one channel. So we started that way, Basil, and we called people customers because when you go to Walmart and you get your 64 pack of toilet paper or whatever it is that you're buying there, Kasim, like you pay for it up front. You're a Walmart customer. You pay for it and then you use the toilet paper. You don't like use the toilet paper and then pay Walmart. You would become a client. Right. So I looked at that as like, well, I want to call everybody a customer as a result of that and try to productize what we were doing as much as possible. That way, all my SOPs would be consistent. All my processes would be consistent. And it was a really simple way of offering a service. And that's how we started. We have since changed that. So now what we do is very, very different. As of probably about 6 months ago, we don't sell advertising as a productized service. Advertising is a component of everything that we do. It's one component. So now it is, all right, well, when people come to us, they might be looking for Facebook and Instagram ads, but what they actually need as opposed to what they want is oftentimes a different thing.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is a strategic growth plan, which is where we diagnose what their issue is, going through ads all the way through to their entire funnel, all the way to their end game service offering, whatever it happens to be, digital product, e-commerce store, you name it, everything, every step along the way. And we figure out where the weak points are. Where are the areas where we can put a lever in there and all of a sudden have an enormous lift almost immediately? And sometimes that's advertising, but oftentimes it's not the advertising. It might be the offer. It might be the sales page. It might be the conversion rate. It might be the AOV. It might be, the offer itself, or it might be the follow-up sequence on email. So what we'll look at is a holistic view and then diagnose that issue, then prescribe a solution, and then implement that solution and then iterate on it ultimately. So we've gone from very much, one size fits all to very much individual. But I think, us as an agency, we've evolved that way because I think we have to, because it's not necessarily just the advertising that they need. And we found that delivers the best results, because at the end of the day, for us, it's all about customer success. It's about, being able to work with people and in businesses that we really believe in and achieve success for them. And in so doing, we achieve success for ourselves. So we've shifted the model. That's a very long answer to a simple question, but I think it's an important one. And I think it's the way where, I see that's where marketing is heading, and agencies in general, just because of this whole, challenge that we have going back to our original point with attribution and advertising channels and single, buckets of attribution sliced up over many, many different channels. It's your overall, what are you doing to elevate my business and grow my business? And I think that's where agencies really need to head in the coming years and months.
I love the distinction between customers and clients. I think that's brilliant. And I think that's something that people should look maybe a little bit more closely at, because especially when you're small and you're just getting started, you just want somebody who's paying you money.
Yeah.
And, call them a client, call them a customer. I don't care. Their check clears. But after a while, you start to realize that clients have a much stronger draw on your time, and they get to be demanding, and they get to direct, and they get to, like you're sort of at their mercy. Customers buy what you got. And if they don't want it, they don't buy it. But that's actually a more scalable model. And Basil was asking about scale. He's got a follow-up, Ralph. He said, is based on what you just said, is that true for in the local business space or just sophisticated businesses like info and digital?
For productizing a service offering, well, I think, our friend Tyler is really good at this for local businesses, especially. It's like, if you're a true local business, I think there's a service offering that can be very much productized, which is, in his case, it's, it's, what is it? It's called Google Places, but it's what is it now?
Directory creation stuff that you're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that unto itself can be very much a productized service, because all you want to do is show up on that, whatever it's called now. I'm drawing a blank.
Google My Business.
Google My Business.
Yeah. The map pack.
What is it again?
The map pack.
The map pack. Right. Yeah. Yep. I think that can be done through a very much productized service offering, because all you're really doing is you're just, doing all these individual directories. And I think Bright Local was one of the companies that he uses and almost outsources it. You could like white label that for local businesses. Pretty amazing, because that's all they really care about. When I was doing local business work, that's all they really cared about. It's not necessarily like, oh, I want to be seen in the Facebook newsfeed. I just want to be atop of Google Places or the map pack.
Jesus. Yeah, I call it the map pack. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but I like it. It has a good ring to it, so I'm copywriting it.
I think that's a good place to start. I'm Googling it right now. Yeah, Google. Well, it says Google Maps, but anyway, yeah, close enough.
There's nothing creative about that.
No, I like yours better.
Yeah.
So no, I think you can. I think the smaller the business and the more like the more niche the business too. Like one of our agency owners who's in our agency group is all he deals with is a single type of martial arts studio. And that's the only thing he does. So he's very niche to that specific, like he's very, very good at that. I mean, I think the riches are in the niches, niche down to scale up. Big fan of that. And he just stamps out the same product service offering for every individual. I think it's a Tai Chi studio. I forget what it is. It's like really specific. Anyway, it's not a huge, TAM, total addressable market by any stretch, but he has a very solid business just targeting those types of studios because he does the same thing for each one in each individual geography. I look at that as like, that is the ultimate productized service-based business. So
we've got a little agency that helps Montessori schools. I know you know, Ralph. And it was created as a passion project. Me and my partner in that agency were like, let's just give everything we can possibly give to Montessori schools and charge them just enough to keep our doors open. We wanted to give them the absolute most for the absolute least. That was truly the mission. It's like one of those not just for profit endeavors. Here's what's interesting about it. I've got better margins in that agency than I do in my agency. And it's because it's so niched down and the product offering is so consistently templated and yet still custom for the Montessori schools that the efficiency of that model, like it's unparalleled. I've never seen anything like it. Like you said about the total addressable market, it's much, much smaller, but I also own the Montessori space. There's 12,000 Montessori schools in the world. It's not a bad space to own. And it happened on an accident. So, one thing that I tell my students a lot is I'm a coach over at DigitalMarketer's Elite program. I don't think you can niche down too far. I think you'd be hard pressed to do so. Now, you can play an intellectual parlor trick on me and be like, oh, well, what about, blonde one-legged nuns? It's like, all right, fine. But really, for the most part, people will say, well,
one-legged nuns? Where did you come up with that one?
People are like, well, is like you said, the martial arts studios too niche? Probably not. As a matter of fact, your buddy's got just a specific, just Tai Chi or just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or just Muay Thai or whatever. My advice to people when they're finding a niche is it needs to be specific enough for you to create their content for them and have it be high quality and relevant. And if you think about that, if I were to create content for generic martial arts studios, that's probably not super high quality. But if I create it just for Aikido, now I've got phenomenal content. And so I'm going to niche down into Aikido studios. And I think you can apply that to, pretty much any industry. And that's the barometer that I look at when I want to see whether or not I think a niche is close enough, is viable enough. And Montessori schools is a good example. We didn't go after schools. We didn't go after private schools. We didn't go after private preschools. We went after private Montessori, you know what I mean? It was just like laser focused. But now we can provide the level of value we need to be able to provide in order to command those margins.
Now, it's a great example, actually, of niching down to scaling up. The one caveat I would always add to that, and reading a great book on this, which we definitely have to talk about here on these YouTube lives about this, and it just sort of reiterates it as well, as like when you are niching down to scale up, or in the riches and the niches, and you're like, great, I'll go after, I don't know, let's see, struggling. No, wait a second. I'm going to go after the market of musicians who are trying to get a record label.
Since they have a lot of money.
Right. My point is like, that's an example of a bad niche, because that is a poor niche, which will not pay for any of your stuff. So like, we actually hired a guy recently. He's a great media buyer for us now. He went into, in essence, that sort of kind of that niche, musicians who want to get better known and through Spotify. And that was like his agency. That's what he did as a consultant. And he's like, I tried to make a go of it for 6 months and nobody could end up paying me. I'm like, well, let's think about your niche to begin with. These guys don't have a whole lot of money.
Right.
Like, they'll do it for free, but at the end of the day, like, you have to pick a good niche that actually has money. Like, there's another company that we work with now. It basically sells to elementary school teachers, and it helps them with music training for their students. It's a very, very niched down, like elementary school teachers, specifically in the music niche, because music is being edged out of a lot of public schools. So that's what these guys do. I would think off the top of my head, that's a terrible niche. Well, it's actually a good niche. And they're a 7-figure plus business just in that niche. But they also have a very good value proposition, a lot of other things. So you got to be very careful with it. I think the first business that I started is a great example of a bad niche. I was a sales manager for a Fortune 500 company, and I just started writing about sales management and said, hey, every sales manager who's overseeing, salespeople, like, wants to know like how to get better at their craft, and created this whole course, spent $10,000, $12,000 on a new website, all these other sorts of things, launched my product through Jeff Walker's product launch formula 2.0, by the way. 2 people. Yeah, not 1.0. I got 2.0. I got 2 people to buy. 2 people out of a list of, I think I had built like this list of like 10,000 people. Point is like, sales managers don't give a crap about improving their own ability. Like, it was something that corporate forced them to do. It's very, very rare. I was like the 1/10 of 1% of sales managers or, sales directors at that point in time who wanted to improve my management and leadership. Like, it's a crappy niche. So, cost me a lot of money and a lot of time, but that's how I actually learned digital marketing from it. The point is, if you are going to niche down, make sure that you really do look at that market and figure it out. And I think there's a couple examples there of some good ones, some ones that might look not so good, end up being good in the case of the teachers. And then the sales manager one, it took me 3 years to figure out it was a bad niche, Kasim, but I learned a hell of a lot, and here we are today. So,
well, what the way to find it, the right niche is to do what we do. You've got a bunch of clients, a bunch of students, and you get to see what they spend, what they make, what their retention is. I've got the same thing. Man, if I had to start over tomorrow, I'd go into stonemasonry, septic, obviously SaaS, but that's, there's caveats to there. But man, I've got a client who's a stonemason. He keeps turning the ads off. He'll spend $3,000 a month and make $400,000. And then he runs out of ramp. He's like, I don't have enough guys. It's unbelievable. The same thing with septic. Crazy. Our septic guy has 33% conversion ratio. And then I thought, well, gosh, what a phenomenal business to be in. So we started calling other septic companies, telling them how good our campaign was. And they were like, we can't serve the customers we have. We don't need any more business. So, there's business intelligence to be had when you're on the tip of the spear as an advertiser.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds like you should raise all your prices for all your guys that are doing that, though.
Yeah, I know. I don't charge enough. That's been a ubiquitous truth my entire life.
No, that's true. Or yeah, I would become a plumber, I think.
Oh, dude, they crush it. They crush it. Yeah. Especially if you're good, if you have solid reputation, good reviews.
And you like return phone calls.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know when an industry is ripe is when the people with the crappy reviews are still in business. Like HVAC. You go look for an HVAC person in Phoenix specifically, everybody's got 2.5-star reviews and they're all booked up. They're booked solid for, into 2029 or whatever. Yeah, what I mean, just ripe for disruption. If somebody came and actually treated their customers correctly and showed up on time, like, can you imagine? It'd be amazing.
That's one hell of a roll up right there.
Yeah.
Really. If you could roll all them up into one big megacorp, I mean, basically what Home Depot did for hardware stores, kind of thing, Product, there's a productized service offering for you right there. Localplumber.com. Oh my God. Anyway. Aspirational. So you wouldn't start an agency. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not now.
Knowing what you know, right?
Now. I mean, when I started my agent, I lucked out, to be honest with you, man. Like, I don't know how this is going to be received. I've got the #1 ranked Google Ads agency in the world, which feels really good to say. Dude, I think I was just right place, right time. And, like we came into Google Ads right on the heel of a major disruption. So all the currently seated players were, being unseated, and I got to roll out our Google Ads business into this, kind of as the new kid on the block, but without any of those bad habits or any of that baggage. And then I got to ride that wave. So, could I do that again if all things were equal? Probably not. I think I just right place, right time, and I'm super grateful for it. And I've got the best business partner in the whole wide world. I mean, he's really one that cracks the code and figures this crap out. I'm the mouth, he's the brains. But yeah, if I had to do it over again, it's too competitive, and there's too many smart people, and they're too intimidating. I'd want to go do something that doesn't require me. I did every single. You have to do the same thing, Ralph. You texting me at 6 a.m, like, oh, I did 2 hours worth of research, and here's what it is we have to talk about. I'm actually sick of having to stay on top of all the things all the time. I bet you I spend 20 hours a week just reading, just so I can like stay ahead of the trends. What I like about Septic is it doesn't change. You know what I mean? Like, the major innovation in Septic was 1995. It was a new valve cover, and they're still talking about it. Like, I envy that business.
Yeah, that would be great, huh? It's so true. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, no, I wouldn't. I mean, it's the interesting thing is that, the agency world is very low barrier to entry, and that's why a lot of people do it now.
Yep.
And a lot of people, I mean, half of our listenership on Perpetual Traffic is agency owners. Yep. And, whenever I go to a conference or, I get mobbed by agency owners saying, thank you so much. You inspired me to start my own agency, and now I'm doing 7 figures a year or whatever. It's like, it's an easy niche to get in. It's hard to stay on top.
Yeah. Well, and so I guess that's the point too, is as long as you don't have the weird, and I think it's just because I'm an attention seeker, as long as you don't have the weird incessant need to be the #1, I like what DigitalMarketer does, seeing as we're in their channel. Like the DigitalMarketer Certified Partner Program, it's a fraction of the cost of a franchise and 100x the opportunity. They hand you a business in a box. The whole model, scripting, paperwork, how to sell it, how to price it, the back end, the support, all of those things. And if you're not doing well into the 6 figures, honestly, that's a 30-hour a week approach too. That could be a total lifestyle business. Like, I would do that. But again, it's not the type of thing that you're going to step in and dominate. You're not going to, it's too big an ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, staying on top of it all, the 1995 valve, it's a great example. It's like staying on top of it all is crazy, really. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that I think, I don't know, keeps it interesting. That's what a lot of like the people that work at Tier 11 say, which is great because they love it. But like, I've been doing this for 15 years now. It's like, how much more do I have to do? It's like, it's hard. I'd rather go, I don't know, read a book or something like that sometimes, but you have to, because that's just the nature of the beast. You have to stay on top of everything. Or at least, listen to the people that are staying on top of it at the very least. So, but yeah, longing for the plumbing niche. Yeah. My plumber, I think he has like a team of like 10 guys. I think he works maybe 5 hours a week.
Really good for him.
Yeah. It's great. And, he lives in a nice big house. He's got a 7-figure plus income, and, go for it. He's booked out through, 2021. It's crazy. So anyway, have we gotten off topic here? Or we've been listening to
talking a bunch of people into being plumbers.
This is going to be known as the plumbing show.
Yeah, exactly.
The plumber episode.
Ralph and I are starting a business together. We're getting into plumbing, and yeah.
And impressive lost in all this is just anybody listening, Google ad agency, and there you are. Son of a gun, you bastard.
Yeah, and honestly, number one that's relatively new. We've been number 2 for a really long time, and we finally broke the threshold. And 2 weeks from now, it fluctuates, but it feels good. It feels, yeah. We do this every Friday, y'all. Every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. We go live on YouTube. We want to answer your questions. We want your help to direct the podcast. Make sure to check out the podcast. The link is in the description. Ralph has been doing the podcast for going on 6 years. Am I wrong in saying that?
I think it's 6 years, I believe.
Yeah. We get 30,000 listeners an episode or something pretty cool. I mean, it's, you said to me once, like, this is Madison Square Garden every week. And I was like, thank you for taking the pressure off.
Nice. Not all at once. They don't come in, but, we're doing like a minor league stadium on day one. How about that in baseball? Like, that makes you feel maybe a little bit better.
It does. Yeah. I know I can strike out and not get like booed off the stage.
Yeah, it's all good.
For those of you that keep tuning in, appreciate y'all. Hopefully we can grow this little subscriber base here that we've got, because I think this is fun. I'm having a blast.
Yeah. Is there a reminder on YouTube? Can you like subscribe and get notifications so people don't have to manually do it?
Let me share my screen here, and I'll show you how. So if you're looking at the YouTube live, over here on the right-hand side is subscribed. And if you click this little bell, you can ask YouTube to give you all notifications, or you can personalize your notifications. But the all notifications makes it, I think, just easier. So notice that's what I do, and that'll be the best way to just get a little ding on your phone or your computer when we start to go live.
Perfect. Well, this has been fun as per usual. Let's I'll see you in plumbing school.
Sounds good. Appreciate y'all. We'll see you next Friday.
All right.